Hi subscribers and watchers, what's up? It's me, Vibs from slidenerd here. Today, I'm going to talk about keyword final in Java. So the final keyword is used in three situations in Java. One, to declare variables or constants. Two, to make final methods. And three, to make final classes. Now let's take a look at what final does in each of the situations when you talk about variables, methods, and classes. So the first thing, use final keyword to make constants in Java. If you have a value like pi equals 3.14, if you want to make it a constant, make it final so that no one else can change its value. Next, let's talk about final methods. If you want to specify that a method cannot be overridden inside a subclass, then use final. Now usually when you use inheritance, you have the superclass and the subclass. If you have a method inside the superclass, you can again define it inside the subclass and write different code inside that method. This is not always desirable. So in that case, in the superclass, if you make the method as final, then in the subclass, you cannot define it again. Now we will take an example of this shortly once we are done looking at these things from a high level perspective and work out how things really work. So when a method is declared as final, the compiler knows how it's going to be used, and hence it will be a little more efficient than what it normally is. Methods that are declared as private are implicitly final because it's not possible to override them inside the subclass. And methods which are static are also implicitly final because there's only one copy of that method existing for all the objects, which means the subclasses don't have access to modify that copy. Now let's talk about the third use of final keyword, that is final classes. Final is the opposite of extends here in this case when you're talking about final with classes. When you say extends, you're trying to inherit from some other class. When you say final class, you're preventing inheritance, or in other words, nobody can inherit the class that is final. Here in our example, if you have this, if you know our class string very well, which has been there with Java since times immemorial, this class is final so that nobody else can extend the string class or modify it in any other way. Once again, we will take a look at this example shortly and understand this even better if you're not sure what is going on right now. Just bear with me till we get through this. See, all the methods inside a final class are implicitly final. So here I'm using NetBeans. Let's take a look at using final in each of the scenarios. One would be to check final variables and constants. Two will be to use final methods, and three will be the final classes. Let's take a look at one here. I have a simple class test over here which has this value pi is 3.14. Inside the constructor of test, I have said pi is 2.14, and inside my main method over here, I have simply created the object of test and I've printed the value which shows us 2.14 right here at the bottom. Now this is a big problem, isn't it? You cannot modify the value of pi because it is a constant. It is supposed to be 3.14 always. In this case, you can use the final keyword like this. You can say final double pi equals to 3.14. As soon as you write final there, take a look. There is an error right below. Here, the error says cannot assign a value to final variable pi. This means that the variable pi cannot be modified anymore. In other words, you just have to remove this. If you run the code right now, it shows 3.14. So this is how you can make constants using final in Java. Now let's take a look at case 2 that we have here, where we are going to use final keyword with a method. There is a class daddy over here. It has method display here where it says I'm the daddy. There's a class child here which extends from daddy, and inside the display, take a look at what it says. Ha ha ha, I'm the daddy, I beat you. So in this case, what is happening is the child is extending from daddy. It is overriding this method display which belongs to the superclass, and inside which it is able to write its own definition, thereby overwriting or changing the definition defined by the superclass. In other words, if you make an object of daddy, if you make an object of child here, you say daddy.display, child.display. If you run this at this point, the daddy will say I'm daddy, but the child is going to say I'm the daddy, ha ha ha, I beat you. In other words, the display method of the child changed the definition or overwrote the definition of what the daddy had to offer. Now this is not always what you want. what you want to do here is you want to make sure that the daddy's display method cannot be changed. In that case, you go here and you make it final. So now that it is final, as you can see, it says an override here. It says display in child cannot override the display in daddy. Okay, let's remove this override and find out what happens. Again, it gives an error. It says display in child cannot override display in daddy. Overridden method is final. In other words, if the superclass has a method which uses the final keyword, the child class or the subclass cannot make that method at all. You gotta remove that method. There's no other way, or you'll have to change the signature of that method so that it doesn't match. For example, probably you can put some int over here or a string message here, and then you can print that message. So this works, but other than that, you can never overwrite the same method and give it a different code in the subclass if your superclass has a method which is final. This is again desirable in some situations where you're performing something in the superclass method and you don't want the subclass method to change that. Now let's talk about the third use of final with classes. Now at this point, you can notice clearly that child can extend daddy, right? What if we can actually prevent that? Here, if we go up and if we say final class daddy, the child cannot even extend from daddy. In other words, inheritance cannot be used. So final using with classes is like the opposite of inheritance because it prevents inheritance while extend support inheritance. In other words, you have to remove this code, or you have to actually remove this part which says child extends daddy and make them two separate classes. So when should you use this? If your super class is doing some secure work or it's doing some kind of work which should not be changed by the subclasses, then make sure that your super class is final. This is the reason why the Java string class is final, because string is immutable and Java developers or people who wrote the platform in Java didn't want anybody to extend the string class and change its property of immutability. Hopefully you guys understood something out of this video. In the next video there is more Java to come. In the meantime, if you like what you saw, please like this video, share this video, subscribe to slidenerd, and let us know your thoughts in the comment boxes below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a nice